welcome back. Let's roll out to California and bring in legendary California radio host and one of the most impactful voices in the conservative movement, Larry Elder. Larry will be a keynote speaker this weekend in Chicago at the Black Conservative Summit in Chicago. Larry, welcome back to the show, and tell my audience what you got going on this weekend in Chicago.
Well, in Chicago, there are going to be a number of Black conservatives, as you mentioned, talking about the problems facing the Black community, most notably fatherlessness. Colonel Alvin West is going to be there, and some other prominent people are going to be there. And this is something that the promoter has been trying to do every year. It got stopped last couple of years because of COVID, so now it's being resumed, and I'm quite honored to be there. You can go to my website at Larry Elder, and you get all the information if you want to come.
Larry, it feels like, particularly among Black men, there's some momentum or movement towards conservative values, the Republican Party, and abandonment of the Democrat Party. Do you feel that as well?
I do, and Jason, it goes back as far as, you might remember this. Remember the Million Man March that was put together by Louis Farrakhan? I didn't support the man, but I supported the mission. And there were, I don't think there were quite as many as a million men who showed up, but there were hundreds of thousands. And I contacted the Capitol Police, the Washington police, and I asked them whether or not crime had gone up or gone down. Normally, when there are these rallies, crime goes up because the officers are there, bad guys know it, and they take advantage. And he said it was the most peaceful rally he ever had. Crime went down. And Farrakhan touched a nerve. A lot of Black people are aware that the 10,000-pound elephant in the room is the absence of fatherhood. That's a far bigger problem than police brutality or systemic racism or the need for reparations or any of the other nonsense that a lot of Black leaders are pushing. So, I campaigned with Donald Trump in 2016. Jason, we were at a Black church in Cleveland, and he talked about the importance of fathers. And he got 8% of the Black vote, which is still low, but higher than the Republicans normally get. And when he ran for re-election in 2020, he got 12%, almost 20% of the Black male vote. So I believe Black men are aware of this problem, even if we don't talk about it as often as we should.
It's funny you mentioned the Million Man March. I was there in 1994. I went with about 10 of my best friends from college. It's one of the greatest events I ever attended. It was very peaceful, very well organized, and I contend there were a million men there. It's funny, and I don't say, I'm just saying this factually. I'm not trying to disparage Farrakhan. My only disappointment was Farrakhan's speech. It was horrible. It was way too long, and it felt like, oh man, he just killed this moment. I'm thinking, Lincoln did the Gettysburg Address in 2 minutes, and MLK did, his speech on the March on Washington speech in about 8 minutes, and Farrakhan went on for 2 hours. But yeah, I agree with you.
And then MLK got off stage left on a high note. My mom and I, Jason, were watching the Million Man March at home, and I said, "Mom, he sounds so sensible." And she said, "Give him time." And then he went into the anti-Semitism and the numerology and all the other things that negate him as a responsible Black leader. I mean, this is a guy who's talked about the trap of the welfare state. He opposes race-based preferences. You take away the anti-Semitism, the nonsense, the unnecessary anger, and this guy could be one of the most prominent, respected, and constructive Black leaders in America. I mean, he's getting all these people out of prison and turning their lives around. He's done a lot of positive stuff, but as I said before, he negates it with the poisonous anti-Semitism.
You're nailing it, and I've told people for years. Look, I get the bad stuff, the anti-Semitism. I get those allegations, but as a Black man, I'm just sorry. I have to admit, his call for us to take responsibility for our families and communities and to be men, it rang true to me then. It rings true to me now. I'm wondering, are you guys getting any support from the clergy or from the religious community in Chicago this weekend?
Well, I don't know. I'm not from Chicago. I'm not really familiar with the clergy there, other than Reverend Jeremiah Wright, for reasons that have nothing to do with this. The reason I'm laughing is because when I ran for governor, Jason, in the recall election, my most contentious interview, and I had a lot of them, was with a bunch of black pastors. I had a virtual interview with around 6 or 8 of them, and everything was going reasonably well. Until I told them that the issue wasn't police brutality. I told them that, if anything, the police were more hesitant, more reluctant to pull the trigger on a black suspect than a white suspect. There have been lots of studies that say that, including one by a black Harvard economist named Roland Fryer. I said the real issue is the large number of black kids into the world without a father in the home married to the mom. I said that number is 70%. And Jason, instead of saying, hallelujah, you're right, amen, they jumped all over me. And I said, you guys are role models. You guys are leaders of the community. You guys set the tone. And here I am speaking the truth, and I'm the bad guy. I'm an evil person. I'm an Uncle Tom. One of them even said, I was going to vote for you until you said that. Who are these people? I don't understand. And Jason, while we're on Farrakhan, this is a man whose mother was estranged from her husband, had a boyfriend, took back up with the husband, got pregnant with Louis Farrakhan, and tried to abort him with a coat hanger. Al Sharpton. Al Sharpton had a nice middle class until his father ran away with another woman, and down to the hood he went. Jesse Jackson. His mother was a teenage mom who was impregnated by the married man next door. And when Jesse Jackson grew up in South Carolina, he was taunted. Jesse ain't got no daddy. Jesse ain't got no daddy, because it was rare then. Barack Obama's first book, Dreams of My Father, was all about the angst he felt from not having a relationship with his biological dad, whom he last saw when he was 10 years old. My point is, these are 4 prominent black leaders, all of whom either had no relationship with their own biological fathers or a troubled one, yet rarely do they talk about what I said earlier is the big elephant in the room, and that is the epidemic of fatherlessness within the black community.
And so it sounds like, Larry, that's the topic you're going to focus in on in your keynote address?
Well, that, and I also want to talk about the lie that the police are systemically racist. We all know that there are bad apples, there are bad doctors, bad lawyers, bad cops, bad talk show hosts, present company, of course, excluded. But it's probably about 1%. And I know that because the most serious scandal in the history of the LAPD was the Rampart scandal. That's the one on which the movie Training Day was based, for which Denzel Washington got Best Actor. There were 70 cops. There were bad cops. There's 7,000 police officers at the LAPD at the time. So that's 1%. Moreover, they probably wouldn't have been cops had they not lowered the standards for diversity. The lead guy regarding Rampart is a guy named Rafael Perez, who applied for 6 other law enforcement departments, Jason, and got turned down because he had low-level offenses that precluded you from being a cop. But because the LAPD lowered standards because they wanted to get more black officers, because for some reason the argument is that if we have a police department that looks like the community, somehow the community is going to be okay when something goes down and they won't yell racism. They do it anyway. The idea ought to get good cops, but that's what they did. I think the same thing happened in Memphis regarding Tyree Nichols. It turned out they lowered standards. And several of these cops probably would not have been cops had they not lowered educational standards and standards that precluded you from being a cop if you got involved in low-level criminal offenses.
That was where I was going to go next, listening to your point, was to Memphis. And then I was going to go to, your first instinct would be to smile and laugh and think I'm joking. But take the controversy that happened in Laverne, Tennessee, with the female cop who was sleeping with everybody in the department. And if you really dug into the story, she started sleeping with everybody because she was incompetent and couldn't do her job. And so guys started asking for sexual favors and they would cover for her. And she only got the job because they went on this diversity, equity, and inclusion kick after 2020. And so, we got to put a woman in here. And then they get someone who can't do their job. And then predators take advantage. Again, the trying to get people to understand that diversity, and I call it diversity, inclusion, and equity, DIE, D-I-E, does not serve us. Someone putting challenges in front of us and leveling the playing field is what actually serves us, because there's no challenge that we haven't met when the playing field is leveled, and we're just, and even if it's not leveled, just
Right.
And I'm not calling for it to be uneven, but put the challenge in front of us, and I can guarantee you, black, brown, white, yellow, whatever, we can all have the ability to meet those challenges and to achieve. But somehow the left has decided the only way that we can get ahead is if they personally give us a handout, right, and then hold that handout over our head for the rest of our lives. So we have to be their puppets. And that's, I'm going to segue, a long way to segue into Alvin Bragg, another one of these, and I'm just going to say, Ivy League educated Negroes who they let in on a favor, and now they own him, and he's out here doing this dumb stuff with Donald Trump because they own him.
Well, he ran on a platform of, I'm going to get Donald Trump, the same as Letitia James did, the AG, I'm going to get Donald Trump. And so clearly there's a political vendetta. That alone is something that ought to disqualify him from going after Donald Trump. But you know, there's a 2-year statute of limitations. This is normally the argument that he paid off the porn star. Normally that would be a financial misconduct thing. That would be a low-level misdemeanor. There's a 2-year statute of limitations, so that's a problem. You've got to figure out some sort of way of extending it. And so what he's doing is arguing that that it was really a campaign finance violation, federal law, that would make it a 5-year statute. Well, that's still not enough time. So now he's arguing that, well, because of COVID, and because Donald Trump was outside of the jurisdiction, living in D.C. or living in Florida, he was able to evade the statute, so it still should run. Well, the reason for the 5-year statute of limitations for people that are outside the jurisdiction is because they're trying to evade prosecution. Donald Trump was doing something called being president, and he was living in Florida, notoriously open-minded. Everybody knew where he was. He wasn't trying to invade anything. So it's all BS. And the whole thing turns on the testimony of a convicted felon, Michael Cohen, who's admitted to lying to Congress, admitted to campaign finance violations, and admitted to tax evasion. Good luck on cross-examination with that guy. Even the New York Times, Jason, said that the prosecution was based upon a, quote, novel, untested theory. CNN said the same thing. When you got people at CNN and New York Times saying the case is weak, the case is pretty damn weak. And also, this guy Bragg would not be there if it not had been for $1 million that was directly or indirectly put into his coffers by somebody like George Soros, who's soft on crime, who's got a bunch of soft on crime DAs all around the country, not doing their jobs, allowing bad guys to be on the streets, preying on, guess who, mostly black people, the kinds of people that people on the left claim that they care about. The whole thing is outrageous.
Larry, give me a preview where you think black conservatives, first you as an individual, and then generalize about black conservatives, where they at, and this will be the final question, where they at on Trump versus DeSantis?
I haven't really talked to many black conservatives about that at all. I'll tell you what this black conservative feels. I very well am going to announce to run for the presidency, Jason. I don't know if I mentioned that to you. I will officially make my announcement sometime next month if I decide to do it, but I'm pretty certain that I will. And I don't really care whether DeSantis wins or Trump wins or I win. The important thing is for us to unify behind whomever the nominee is, and not to chew each other up during the process. When I ran for governor, I did not say a single negative thing about any of my Republican rivals. I got 3.5 million votes. I got more votes than the other 45 rivals pretty much combined. And I didn't have as much name recognition as Caitlyn Jenner and some of the other people, but I didn't say one negative thing about them. And I finished right behind Gavin Newsom. I got 49% of the vote on the replacement side. My next highest rival got 9%. So I was able to do this and navigate this without carving up people on our own side. I just hope we adhere to the Reagan's 11th commandment, thou shalt not speak negatively about fellow Republicans. Obviously, Donald Trump apparently has not read read that commandment, but I have, and I'm not going to do it. So whoever we side with, we have to go after the Biden policies on the borders, on his opposition to school choice, for crying out loud, the inflation, we're no longer energy independent, this obsession with electric vehicles, which is going to cost a great deal of money to people at the lower end, many of whom are black. These are the kinds of things we ought to be talking about, and I hope whoever the rival, the survivor is in the primary process, that we get behind him or her.
Larry, have a great time in Chicago. Good luck in Chicago. Hopefully you don't get assaulted the way Jussie Smollett was assaulted. Don't go out and get any Subway late at night and have, that's MAGA country, so you're in jeopardy.
I understand.
Good luck.
I understand. I like those 2-inch footlongs. Also, I got a pack. It's called elderforamerica.com. Elderforamerica.com. Jason, throw a little something in the tip jar.
elderamerica.com.
Elderforamerica.com.
I'll throw you. You know what, Larry? I'll do that right now. Thank you, and good luck in Chicago.
God bless. Thank you for having me.
Don't miss a second of Fearless. Hit that like button and subscribe to keep up with all of our latest content.